pleased to introduce Dr. Alan Downs.
When I wrote The Velvet Rage, I wanted to cut to the core of what it's like to live with a secret that makes you believe that you're fundamentally unlovable. And that came out of my experience as a gay man, as a therapist that works with a lot of gay men. When you grow up with the secret of your own sexuality, when you know that if you were to reveal that to others that you would be rejected, that they might not approve of you, that they might not love you. And then long after you come out of the closet and you become comfortable with that, there's this ingrained, hardcore belief that there's something about me that is fundamentally flawed, and that I somehow need to compensate for that. Now, years later, I began working in a dialectical behavior therapy group, and as many of you know, DBT, or dialectical behavior therapy, and I'll refer to it often as DBT throughout this morning, is designed primarily to treat borderline personality disorder. Now, borderline personality disorder, for many of us in the room, is almost like a dirty word. As a therapist, when they don't respond to your wonderful treatment and all of your expertise, what do you say? Well, borderline. They're borderline, right? Yeah, it's kind of like a throwaway category. But it is a very real and pervasive disorder, we all know that. And as I began working with many of the folks that were coming into a DBT program, many of which do fit the full criteria for personality disorder, and many which do not but have certain traits, I found that they had the same experience that I did. They weren't necessarily gay. They had grown up with a secret, and as they had lived with that secret, they became convinced that there was, deep down inside them, there was something that made them unlovable. And the impact that that had on their life was absolutely profound. So today, that's what we're going to talk about with shame-based trauma. Let me talk with you about a couple of the questions that come up for many of our clients. How do I find a lasting sense of purpose in my life? Why am I never really satisfied? When will I finally be content with my accomplishments? Why do I eventually get dissatisfied with most all of my relationships? How do I find the courage to be my own person? Why am I so sensitive to criticism? Will I ever find lasting joy and passion? There's currently no diagnostic category that clearly captures the essence of this, and yet all of us in this room know that most of the folks coming in for treatment are struggling with these very issues. They may be associated with depression, they may be associated with PTSD, they may be associated with a personality disorder, but those don't clearly capture what's happening here. Instead, what we see is chronic dissatisfaction, a lack of meaning and purpose and direction, and hypersensitivity to invalidation. These are some of the characteristics of shame-based trauma: an inability to maintain lasting and fulfilling relationships. All right, so let me take it back. Most of you know this, but I want to take it back really to what I'm going to call Psych 101. We need to get a little bit of an understanding about basic emotions. There's been a lot that's been written about emotions. Many of you know that in the room, but it's good to review it because it will set the stage for how we're going to talk about shame and the impact that shame has on our life. First of all, what we know about most of the research is that there really are just 5 basic emotions. Now, that may sound odd, but because we all know there's a real range of feelings, and the landscape of our emotional experience is really wonderful and complicated, but when you cut it down to its basic building blocks, what we find is that there really are 5 basic building blocks of emotion. All of the other emotional experiences that we have tend to be emotions coupled with thoughts, or emotions that are coupled with each other that create that complexity. So the 5 that we know clearly are anger, sadness, joy, fear, and shame. Now there's some interesting things about these 5 that we'll talk about, but what we understand about these emotions is that these are the ones that clearly there is a physiological change in your body when you experience these emotions. For anything else, it's not clearly different from one of these states. For example, if we talk about frustration and we talk about anger, we can't identify necessarily when you're experiencing that a difference in your body between those two emotions. So what the difference is between, let's say, anger and frustration, it's the same basic bodily response coupled with thoughts around interpretations, if you will, around what that experience or that feeling is. So the reason why we're angry is because we're not getting what we want, or something's blocking us, so we decide that we're frustrated. But the underlying emotion is anger. We could go through each one of these and do the same thing. Sadness is the same, as well as joy, fear, and shame. Now, what is the emotion that we all talk about that isn't appearing here? Someone, anyone?
Love.
Love, exactly. That's what's really profound, and if you really get this, it will actually change your life, and it changes a lot of your work with your clients. Love is not a basic emotion. Love is actually joy that's experienced in the presence of another person or another thing over time, coupled with a lot of thoughts about commitment. There may be sexual attraction that's part of it. It's a much more complex emotion. But at the core of love, we find joy. Now, why is that important to us? Because there is, of all of these emotions, you notice, how many of them are positive?
Only joy.
Only joy. There's only one, and there are 4 that are negative. So what that tells us is that as humans, in our emotional feeling, we are predisposed really toward the negative. And our emotional system is really designed to be a warning system. It's like the red lights on your dashboard, you know, what they used to call them the idiot lights. I guess now we've got computers on cars and it's not quite like that. But when something would go wrong, you get a light that would come up, that engine light that's sort of horrific on a dashboard that comes on and means you're about to blow it up. That's what the emotional system really in biology is about. It's about warning you that you need to pay attention, you need to do something differently. So to understand that, let's take a look at our emotions as a guidance system. Think about anger. When you're angry, what is the urge that you have? What do you want to do? What's that? Fight. You want to strike out. You want to say something. You want to do something aggressive. Kill the other one. It's an urge. The emotion of anger has an action urge associated with it. In fact, all of the 5 emotions have action urges associated with them. And the action urge associated with anger is to strike out or to attack, either verbally or physically. So it is the design of anger is when we feel it. Nature, biology, our higher power gave us this emotion as a warning to strike out, to do something in our environment that would make a difference. Sadness, it's often to deactivate or to seek comfort. And if you think about anyone who's struggled with the emotion of sadness, as in depression, recurring sadness over and over again, what happens to them? They go away, they stay in their room, they don't get out of bed, they isolate, right? And when you felt sad, you may have done the same things, coupled with seeking comfort or safety in a place with relationships or people that you know. The action urge with sadness is to seek that. And so when we feel it, we are urged, there's an urge within us to reach out and to do that, to seek that particular, to follow that particular action. And with joy, it is to activate. So it is to do something. Whenever you go to a wedding, whenever you go to a celebration, what is one thing that always happens there? What? Dancing, exactly. It's a great illustration of this. When you feel joy, the first thing we want to do is get up and do something. And we tend to want to do more of it. So the action urge with joy is really to activate. It's the opposite of sadness, which is really kind of a profound finding that's having a lot of effect on the treatment of depression these days with activation therapy. But it is to reach out and to do more of it and to engage with others. The action urge with fear, we all know that usually is flight. It's sometimes described as flight or fight, but that becomes really more of a complex mix of fear and anger. And then we look for the action urge of shame, which is to hide. All of this is to bring us to this point because I want you to understand that when we feel shame, the urge that we have within us is to hide. And there are many, many ways in which we can hide.